Hi, and welcome to the Saxophone Academy. I'm Dr. Wally Wallace, and today we were talking about how to record your saxophone, a very practical guide, not getting into the nitty-gritty, but the overview of the parts and pieces you'll need to record yourself and the basics of how to use them, and some tips and a discussion with my colleague Tyler Anderson about our impressions of the gear we use here at the Saxophone Academy and what might be best for you. Now, I actually firmly believe that it can really be beneficial to anyone learning an instrument to learn how to record the instrument well. Now, even just using your phone is going to be very helpful and better than not doing anything at all, but stepping up our game a little bit on a modest budget can have huge benefits. And the reason we need to record ourselves are many: auditions, young students, getting feedback from teachers. If you're part of a virtual studio like mine, my students record themselves and get feedback from me. Or perhaps you want to get together with your friends, record your band for an audition demo, or most importantly is just getting feedback on your practice from yourself, getting an accurate representation of what you sound like and listening back. That is an incredibly powerful part of your practice. I added far too late in my own practice. It's something that I recommend all students begin to learn more about. Now, as far as the basics of gear that you're going to need obviously a microphone. The microphone, through an XLR cable, not pictured here, plugs into what's called an interface, and the interface plugs into your computer. The computer is right underneath where basically you are. There's a computer right there. So microphone to interface to the computer. So the microphone picks up sound, obviously, and then it goes to the interface. The interface is like a translator. So it takes the analog information, makes it digital, and sends it to our computer. So it's like a translator for our AI overlords, which I think they're doing a great job, by the way. Now, today we're covering three types of microphone: the dynamic microphone, the ribbon microphone, and the condenser microphone. I use all three of these in my daily work life, and you'll notice I'm not talking about USB microphones. They are incredibly convenient. Now, a USB microphone is one that plugs directly into your computer. You don't need an interface. They are very convenient and maybe a decent option for some people. Matter of fact, when I'm talking on the camera, I'm actually using a USB microphone right here. They're fine. They're highly convenient. I don't like the way they make the saxophone sound. I don't think they have a very accurate representation of the saxophone compared to a beginning budget gear. These interfaces can start at just about $100. A USB microphone, I've invested in some of the more expensive ones like this Apogee. They don't sound bad, they just don't sound accurate in a way that I'm really looking for. So they're a convenient option, but I really want to stick with the basics of dynamic, ribbon, and condenser, and an interface. There's a lot of reasons to do this: upgradability, flexibility, and eventually getting together and collaborating with other musicians. Having an even inexpensive interface and more options, I think, is the best bet for most saxophonists. So to give you a basic understanding of what you're looking for in a microphone, let's talk about the three types of microphones. And my colleague Tyler Anderson popped over to play in front of each of these. And what I did was actually stand back in the room about 15-20 feet away and listen to him playing, and then compare to how accurate did these microphones capture what he was doing. And this is important. Personally, I am not looking for a microphone that sounds good. Bear with me, I know that sounds funny, but I don't want something that sounds warm or sounds bright or sounds clear or brings out X, Y, or Z. I want as accurate as possible. I find that most pleasing on studio albums, and also when I'm listening back and reflecting on my own playing, that's what I want, an accurate representation. So we're going to listen to all three of these types of microphones, hear Tyler play them, and then Tyler and I will talk about it afterwards and see if you agree with what we heard. First up, we're looking at a dynamic microphone. This is the Shure SM57. This is a ubiquitous mic seen in live venues all over the world. They record the President of the United States giving speeches on this. Anytime I've played in a club, the chances are some sound engineer will stick this pointing at my bell, and it has a lot of uses. I use this for the Saxophone Academy podcast. When my co-host, Dr. Susan Fancher, comes over, we use these, and there's a very good reason why. It is very good at capturing sound up close and ignoring sounds that you don't want. It has very little bleed. It has good noise attenuation, meaning there's about a basketball-sized area that if you get close to this mic, you're going to get a very clear, somewhat accurate representation of what's in front of it, and it's very good at rejecting outside sounds. So in live venues, it's great to prevent sound bleed. So you can play your saxophone on here. It's not going to pick up the guitar or the bass so much. Or likewise, I use it for podcasting because if the air conditioning kicks on or someone's honking their horn outside, it really does a good job of kind of ignoring it and picking up the important things right in front of it. So let's listen to Tyler Anderson play through this mic and see how it sounds. Next up, let's take a listen to a ribbon microphone. Now, interestingly enough, a ribbon is a type of dynamic microphone, but instead of having a coil inside, a moving coil, it has a ribbon, a little thin strip of metal, a metal ribbon, hence ribbon microphone. Like the dynamic microphone, the Shure SM57, this is not powered. There's no electronics inside amplifying the sound. So this is not as sensitive as some of the other microphones we'll look at today, but it does have a very natural sound, and given the nature of the ribbon, most people find these to be a little bit warmer, kind of attenuate the brighter partials. The reason I love ribbon microphones is I think they sound beautiful when recording classical saxophone. They really do kind of somewhat tap down key noise, air noises, but still sound very natural, and warm is just a word most people use to describe ribbon microphones. So let's listen to Tyler Anderson play on this SE Electronics Voodoo VR1. And do note, this is the VR1. They do make a VR2. This is the first version. And like the dynamic microphone, the Shure SM57, this does a good job of rejecting noise outside of its polar pattern. Let's not go there. But what this is fairly good for is also playing live. I've recorded with the Sononaut several times with this microphone in front of my saxophone. I got a little bit of bleed from the instruments, but not bad. It does a good job of just isolating the instrument it's recording, while I still think it sounds very natural to the saxophone, even when listening to Tyler Anderson play jazz. Now, finally, we have the microphone I actually use most often when I'm recording jazz. And this is a condenser microphone. Specifically, this is a large diaphragm condenser. Don't act like you're not impressed. So the way these work is there's a large disc, the diaphragm, that captures sound. Condenser microphones come in more or less two varieties, small diaphragm and large diaphragm. I'm sure there's medium diaphragms. This is a large diaphragm condenser, and I find these to be great at capturing the saxophone. A lot of detail, but also sound very natural, especially this Shure model. I'll put a link down below. Now, these are powered, meaning your interface sends a little bit of electricity to this microphone via the cable through something called phantom power. There's supposed to be a phantom power Nope. No budget. We're out of budget. Phantom power. That's not as much fun. Phantom power. So your interface sends electricity to the microphone. It has internal electronics which amplify the signal, which you get a lot of detail and a lot of power coming out of this microphone. You don't have to turn the gain up nearly as far. So this is a much more sensitive microphone, and with great sensitivity comes great responsibility. That was a very strange thing to say that I did not plan, but what that means is it's great at capturing all the detail of your saxophone and everything in the room and around your saxophone. Condenser microphones are meant to be used in a studio-controlled environment, meaning when we were getting ready to record this, I had a delivery. some bookshelves were the shelves you see behind me were being delivered. So while that was going on, obviously we had to stop the recording. With a dynamic microphone, we may not even have had to stop the recording. This, if the air conditioning, and a matter of fact, honestly, the air conditioning did kick on while we were recording this, or the heat rather, we had to stop the recording because this will pick up the hum quite loudly. If someone's mowing the lawn outside or a leaf blower, and in North Carolina, where I live, I got to say, between November and January, there's nearly constant leaf blower noise. It's getting really old. Does no one buy rakes anymore? Do rakes not work? People too lazy for rakes? What were we talking about? Background noise, and that's the bane of this existence. To use a condenser microphone, you really need to be playing by yourself or in a controlled environment. So if you're getting together with your friends, a guitarist, a pianist, a drummer, you're going to get a lot of sound bleed. But if you're recording by yourself with backing tracks or in a controlled studio environment, this is going to give you a very detailed, natural sense of what your saxophone sounds like. So let's go ahead and listen to this large diaphragm condenser microphone. Now again, when you're using these, you need to make sure you're using phantom still fit step no graphic. All right, you need phantom power. So there is a switch on most interfaces. This is a little button. A red light comes on. You know you're sending phantom power to your microphone. The ribbon microphone and the Shure SM57 do not use any phantom power. And here's one slightly important thing to note. Vintage ribbon microphones can not only use phantom power, they could be damaged by phantom power. Modern ribbon microphones, I've been assured by my sound guy that they're not going to be damaged by phantom power if you accidentally leave it on. But if you have a very nice vintage ribbon microphone, you have to be sure to turn phantom power off, or apparently it can damage the ribbon microphone. Most of us don't have to worry about that, but with holiday dinner parties coming up, I think you're going to impress your friends with that little tidbit. So after recording all three microphones, I sat down with Tyler and we just kind of talked about it. He also has a lot of in-depth videos showing you how to use these, and also, more importantly, how to use your interface and how to get it into your computer and what to do with your computer. I will link to those videos. But getting the right microphone is really job one. So let's take a listen to what Tyler thought of each microphone, listening back. All right, so we just listened back to the sound samples, 3 different mics, 3 different types of microphones, 3 different price points. Let's start with the least expensive and our thoughts. First up is the Shure SM57, which is what kind of microphone?
It's a dynamic microphone, which it says right on the on the guy.
It's very helpful.
Shure SM57.
Dynamic, yeah.
Yeah.
So sound impressions.
So this mic did what I thought it would do, which is
it didn't disappoint because expectations were modest.
Yeah, it's a $100 microphone, and it's why it's used so much. Also because it's great for live settings.
Right.
Dynamic microphones have a smaller polar pattern, so they have better sound attenuation, which means that it's only going to pick up sound that's very close to the microphone. Right,
about a basketball or grapefruit sized area.
Yeah,
and it's great for podcasting because it keeps out all the traffic noise. And this is what I do use for the Saxophone Academy podcast. So my lawn guy, I mow my own lawn. I don't have a, but if I did have a lawn guy and he were outside, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's great noise attenuation. Okay.
Yep.
But how did the saxophone sound?
But so this microphone struggles in the lower frequencies, and it also struggles with detail overall. So it's picking up a lot of higher frequencies, but not with a great sense of smoothness and detail because they can sound a bit harsh, which often means to me that it's like the way it's capturing the frequencies, they're kind of fighting against each other.
All right, so next up, second mid-tier price point. This is an entry-level ribbon microphone. The SE is the brand name, Voodoo VR1. I think it's about the cheapest ribbon mic you can get from a reputable manufacturer.
Yeah, the last time I checked, I think they sit around $300 to $400.
Google it.
Yeah, so there's the newer model of this, which is the Voodoo VR2, which is actually one that I use at home if I want to use a ribbon mic.
Okay.
They're great. Yeah.
So, sound impression, listening back.
Yeah, so ribbon microphones are called ribbon microphones because what's helping produce the sound is a ribbon inside of it that's interacting with the frequencies that it's around.
Right, thin metal ribbon.
That ribbon tends to create a very warm sound, which can be really pleasing, especially in the lower frequencies. And if you think about a lot of the iconic saxophone recordings that we love, that warm tenor sound, those are ribbon microphones.
Yeah. I also love ribbon microphones for classical saxophone because it does kind of attenuate the higher, brighter partials. They're there. They're just more subtle, very dark, rich sound. So, and actually, when I do record classical saxophone and the samples and the mouthpiece demos, that's the microphone I'm using.
Yeah, so, when you listen back to the recording of this one, it's going to sound a lot darker than each of these microphones. It does a poor job picking up the higher frequency range. That the high frequencies have a little bit of a roll-off. And, one of the things that people often use to solve that issue is you often need a lot of gain.
Right. So when we were using the ribbon, the gain on the input level was cranked nearly all the way up.
Yeah, and so a lot of people who are really serious about microphones will use cloud lifters that add a lot of gain before it gets to the microphone, because that makes the microphone start to pick up those higher frequencies, and it's quite a beautiful vintage warm sound.
In my YouTube videos where I do classical mouthpiece reviews or play classical music, I am using that microphone with a cloud lifter. For the demonstration today, just to show you what the bare budget gets, we did not use a cloud lifter.
Yeah.
And the high end suffered a little bit.
Yeah, it did. And, this is another situation where if you are going to try to mix with this microphone, you want to have a good amount of knowledge about how to work with it, because there's ways to work with it, but it can quickly become overly muddy sounding in a recording.
Right. I find condensers, I like to aim more at the bell. The ribbon, I kind of like aiming towards my left. Get a little bit more of the color of the sound of the saxophone.
Yeah.
It works pretty well.
And that's a great point. The way you position all of these microphones is going to have a difference. And if you are using a microphone, you might want to aim more towards your upper palm keys,
right? So
that you're just kind of favoring a little more of those higher frequencies
with the ribbon specifically.
Yeah,
agreed. But for the budget, pretty good.
It's a great microphone. It's a professional microphone. I've used it often in professional recordings and have never been disappointed. But I used it because I wanted a very specific thing. You know what I mean? I wanted it to sound a certain way, and I was like, well, this is the microphone
very warm
for that. Yeah.
So at the high end of the budget, this is actually the microphone I use for all the jazz YouTube videos. What is this? I mean, I know, but...
Yeah, so this is a Shure condenser microphone.
Right. So what is a condenser microphone?
Condenser microphones come in large diaphragm and small diaphragm versions. So the large diaphragm tend to be microphones that are used for vocals and instruments. The small diaphragm condensers are often used for like drums and more percussive.
Right. So this is a large diaphragm.
Yeah.
And this is what was recommended to me by my Sweetwater guy.
Yeah.
If you're into recording, you get a Sweetwater. You get your own personal Sweetwater guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, mine's better than yours. But yeah, so he recommended large diaphragm condenser microphone. And so listening back sound impression. So this is the most expensive. This sits around $1,000.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
And there's, for a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, there's cheap condenser microphones.
Yeah, and I think, I have an AKG P420, which was like $450.
How does that sound?
It does well.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's not as great as, I'm using at home. I'm using a Neumann TLM 103, which is the $1,200 microphone, but it's...
Right. Well, it's not as good as my Shure, which is equally chef kiss. Right. So what did we hear when we listened to the Shure, when we listened back to the sound sample?
Yeah. So condenser microphones are excellent captures of detail.
Yeah.
And this can be a blessing and a curse.
Right. So as we were getting ready to record, the air conditioning kicked on.
Yeah.
And we stopped immediately when we were using this microphone. If we were using the Shure SM57, who cares? You probably won't even hear it.
Yeah, so a good example, these microphones are highly sensitive, which is why they pick up detail and why they're only used in studios. You never want to use one of these live.
No.
Or
if your lawn care guy is outside. You can't do it when there's like leaf blowers and...
Yeah, I mean, I can hear, at home I have an office and I have the door shut, and if I have a fan on anywhere else in our apartment, I can hear it.
You got loud fans, yeah. No, I mean, but it's that. So you have, these are really meant for controlled studio environments.
Yep, and, when we talked about like polar pattern earlier, these have a large polar pattern, so they are picking up sound... from all over, and that doesn't mean you don't want to position the microphone correctly. That's still a part of it. You can't just kind of move it around everywhere and it's going to sound the same. No. Yeah. But it is going to capture all the detail of your playing. If your saxophone is noisy, the keys are noisy, you're going to hear key noise.
First time I recorded classical saxophone with an engineer that wasn't experienced, we used this, and all I heard was breath, key noise, and it was I felt like I was not happy with myself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and so it's picking up all of that. And,
every little click and clack.
But all that detail, and when you listen back to the recording, it feels more like you're in the room.
Well, and
with that instrument.
Very good point. So we did not, the sound sample of this, we processed in no way. This was just straight, completely dry. And listening back to some actually inexpensive studio monitors that I have in there, it sounded very close to the way, because I was just standing behind the camera while you were recording these.
Yeah.
It sounded like Tyler sounded in the room. It was very accurate.
Yeah, and so this is, when you listen to albums on iTunes or on the radio or whatever, these are recorded in very controlled environments with condenser microphones, and they're great for mixing because you have so much information to work with.
So Tyler, if people want to learn more about not which equipment to buy necessarily, but how to use it, you've got videos on the Get a Sax channel.
Yeah, so I've got some videos on the Get a Sax channel, one on recording on a budget, one that's on what kind of microphone should you use, where I actually use a Shure FM57, a Voodoo VR2, and then my AKG P420.
Which is actually less expensive than this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And in those videos, I go through how to set up all the equipment and the equipment that you need. So if you're looking to get into this and you're like, what do I get and how I set it up, those are all spelt out in those videos. Yeah.
So like this video first, then go watch Tyler's.
Yes.
And then like those as well.
Yeah. Like them as well.
You're going to have questions. I will do my best to answer in the comments below, or more accurately, get people that know what they're doing to answer in the comments below. I have a very functional knowledge of recording engineering. I'm certainly not an expert, but I've gotten to the point where I can make my saxophone sound like it does in the room, which is really what I want, even if I don't understand frequency response. The bottom line is you don't have to spend a lot of money, and even if you only record on your phone, that's way better than not recording yourself and listening back altogether. And of course, none of this matters unless you go practice. Have a great week.